fundraising is a game. These are investors, they have billions under their management, they know better and they don't know better. Let's play those games. A lot of it is psychological.
Yeah. What are you doing with that money?
The Chelsea team that I ended up joining, notable names such as Mason Mount, Declan Rice, Reece James.
Really?
Be Real contacted us, well, their lawyers contacted
Really?
us.
Saying,
saying this is a bit too similar.
You ordered a milky coffee.
Yep.
Cool.
You meant to eat them.
Yeah, you meant to get, yeah.
Friends these days track each other's locations, photos, what they're listening to. We're thinking, why hasn't anyone tried connecting friends through the things that they're buying and selling? It doesn't always end up like that. You sometimes do just get no.
How did you keep going?
I think I did cry straight out the office, as you would.
I'm always tempted to call you Haz. Do people do that to you?
No, but I was at a networking event and someone called Haz rocked up and he had his name badge Haz, and I was like, why are you called my company? It's like, my name's Haz.
Haz, yeah.
If you,
I know. Haz has been on the podcast.
Haz Hubble. Yeah, that's exactly who it was, Haz Hubble. So yeah, interesting. But yeah, if you call me Haz, no worries.
So how I really like to start the podcast is take it back to your childhood. Was there anything that influenced you as a child that you kind of knew you'd be an entrepreneur one day?
Yeah, I always had a kind of itch for some reason to build things and to start businesses. The first business I started was at the age of 7 years old.
7?
Yep, it was a dog grooming company.
Nice.
I went to an animal fair thing and I bought this dog brush. So this means that I can get dogs and I can brush them and I can build a business around it.
So you thought in your head, I can charge people to brush their dogs?
Yeah, that's exactly. And genuinely, at 7 years old, I probably groomed about 5 dogs and then packed it in because I was like, you know what, for £8, I'm not enjoying this that much. And the kind of thought of being a 7-year-old businessman was better than actually doing it. I just wanted to go and play sport and hang out with friends.
I'm confused who would give you their money to brush their dogs. Were you hanging around like ultra wealthy people that can't brush their own dogs?
I basically just put a poster outside my primary school and it was just friends' parents who had dogs, and I'll just do it outside the school gates for 10 minutes after school.
At 7, how did you realise you could exchange value for money? Because that's something I think all entrepreneurs have that moment. I'm just wondering at 7, it's really young to know that.
I think it's slightly indirect, but I grew up in a quite competitive professional sporting environment. I was playing for Chelsea Academy at the age of 7. We were getting paid £12 a week, basically to cover the cost of, lunch on the way to trainings. And so a week, so £12 a week, it's nothing, right? But I'm a 7-year-old kid, and so I guess I've seen, okay, I play football and I get £12 in return. And so maybe that's the first thing that kind of made me realise, people get paid for doing all sorts. But I can't pinpoint it down to one realisation, but I always just had ambition to try and turn everything that I did into money.
Into cash.
Into cash, yeah.
I love that, even at 7.
Yeah.
And what was being part of the Chelsea Academy like?
Yeah, cutthroat. At the age of 8, 9, we had access to more nutrition, physio, gym, coaches than most professional athletes in other sports. You would train 4 times a week at 7
That's
7
crazy.
to 9. You're playing as a team ultimately, but you know that you're up against your peers to try and get selected, right? The Chelsea team that I ended up joining, notable names such as Mason Mount, Declan Rice, Reece James.
Really?
Yeah, they're all from that team. So it was a good crop of talent. Obviously, I am nowhere near as good as those guys. I dropped out of the system 14 years ago now, but ultimately it shows how young you have to start. These guys dedicated their lives from the age of 7, and now look at them, they're all managing to play for the biggest clubs around the world. A story that I still can't really believe happened is when I was getting told that I was getting cut. They pulled me into a kind of a corporate office. I'm a 7-year-old kid, I've got my dad by my side, I've got no idea what's going on. They pulled me into an office, there's 2 really scary kind of football directors. You're literally sat there as if you're getting cut from a job at the age of 7 or 8, and you take it in your stride. I think I did cry straight out the office, as you would. But then it's only now that I've realised, and been in a few jobs, that you realise how crazy that is at such a young age to put that environment around a kid to deliver bad news ultimately.
You'll still remember it, so does it still hurt?
Yeah, obviously it's one of those, I think we all have those memories across our formative years that we just can't get out of our heads. And sitting across that table is definitely one of them, yeah.
One of your core memories. Yeah. Are you happy you're an entrepreneur now? Is football behind you?
In all honesty, the dream is to be a footballer, right?
Really?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, that's long gone. It's probably the biggest regret because, again, a little bit of insight. When they did cut me, they actually offered me a contract as a goalkeeper to stay
Did they?
on. At that age, they know that you're still very young. You can learn new skills. And in between sessions, I used to goal. And what they saw, they seemed to like. And my dad at the time was working actually in Canary Wharf, and he was having to take his kids to Cobham in Surrey.
Yeah.
And so that's a took from leaving the office to dropping me off. That's 2 hours. Yeah. And when you're doing that 4 times a week, ultimately that decision was taken out of my hands. It was my parents' decision. I don't blame them at all. You need to make a living. But yeah, I would have liked to stay in the academy system a little bit longer. I did go on to play for Fulham and Reading, but by 10, 11, I left the programme. But yeah, it's a big regret of mine. Obviously, I want to play professional sport and get paid 200 grand a week, but then I think that's one of the reasons why the next best thing for me is to try and become an entrepreneur and see if you can build something from the ground up, solve people's problems. I think that's the closest thing to scratching that professional athlete itch. Yeah.
What is Has?
Yep. So
I don't even know if we got into this.
No. That probably should have been the first thing I explained. Has is an AI resale app made for best friends. So ultimately, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take the digital receipts that lie dormant in people's email inboxes, automatically find those receipts for things like clothes, this microphone, furniture, electronics. Take all the interesting information such as the image of the item from the receipt, the title, the price, when you bought it, the retailer, and pull it through completely automatically onto a feed. And so what that produces is an app where you can see everything you own. You can track how the resale values are increasing or decreasing, so you're more informed of when to try and resell. We then ultimately want to see if we can make it a social concept. Friends these days track each other's locations, photos, what they're listening to. We're thinking, why hasn't anyone tried connecting friends through the things that they're buying and selling? It's quite personal, it's quite invasive, but that's ultimately the opportunity and the fun if done right.
It's super novel, but as you mentioned, it feels very invasive. Do you want everyone seeing everything you bought? Like even your closest friends?
So that's one of the challenges with HADS. Challenges and opportunities. I think that feeling of, wow, this is slightly new. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think a lot of big businesses go through that until it becomes kind of something that's just everyday life. There are obvious things that people don't want to showcase to their friends in the public. We don't even classify that. And so
how do you know what that is?
So that is AI technology. The way that you can conceptualize it is there are barriers or filters between someone connecting their email and it going public on our app. And we've got about 5 filters. So if a digital receipt or an item gets through the first, second, third, it might be the fourth that goes, you know what, we've spotted something here that might be inappropriate or that someone doesn't want to show. And then obviously users have full control to say, okay, this is just for me, this is for my friends, this is public. So you have full privacy control over it as well. So we're definitely aware of the invasiveness of it, but ultimately we're building the tools to allow users to be in control.
So I guess even at one point in time, location would have been quite invasive, but now it's a normal thing.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. If you'd asked people 20 years ago, you could pretty easily track the location of anyone. Yeah. So I think people, the first stance is, not sure about that, my data invasiveness. And then when they start seeing the value proposition and they start trusting the brand and the solution a little bit more, I think you quickly get over those solutions because it makes life better. And I think that's key to HAS is how can we make people's lives better? How can we make them have more fun with friends? And ultimately, how can we give them more money? Fundamentally, HAS is trying to make it easier for people to turn their unwanted things into cash. And so if we can protect the user's privacy, put them in full control and give them more money, I think we're onto a winner here. For example, I buy this t-shirt from Abercrombie or whatever, it will send a notification to my friends and it will say, Ronan's just checked out or just bought something, go and check his new haul.
Do you have to approve that?
So you can approve the items that are getting pulled through and you can also approve your notification settings, obviously. So
I was just wondering, so every time you buy something, would you have to say, I want this on?
Yes, like you would on Instagram, setting a public or private. It'll be a set of settings which you predetermine, so you don't need to every time. It'll be I'm happy to showcase everything. I want a 24-hour window. I want only my friends to see this or certain best friends. And so it's the exact same controls like close friend stories on Instagram. We just ask the user to create settings that they feel comfortable with, and then it'll all be automated from that point onwards. And then friends can see that notification, they can go on the app and they can react to the items, they can share their thoughts, and that's the start of the social interaction that we want to build. Is that has.
I do like that, because my friend has a problem spending money. And I think if she saw that I knew every time she spent money, it would be visible. I think.
Yeah. We also have it's a leaderboard feature, and with your kind of close friends, you can see who's the biggest shopaholic, who made the most money that month from reselling things, who's spent the most money, who on average owns items for the longest period of time. And so there is that element of, I want to be a little bit nosy, and I want to see what my friends own, how much they're spending, how much they're making in terms of reselling, how quickly they throw things away, sell things. And so we want to add a gamification element as well.
It's a fun concept.
We're trying. It's, again, the reason why I think why we got funding is because it's not really been done before.
It's not.
It's
really novel.
It's really novel, and that ultimately brings challenges, but that's also a big opportunity from an investment standpoint. And we're excited to develop it and get it in more users' hands.
Now we're going to play a game sponsored by Bubbleology, which is Never Have I Ever, where I'm going to ask Ronan a series of questions, and if he's done it, he's going to sip this delicious bubble tea. Ronan, you ordered a milky coffee.
Yep.
And I've never had anyone order a milky coffee, and it felt very practical. It felt very straightforward. It felt very no nonsense.
Okay. Yeah, see, I'm a bit of a bubble tea novice. So I'm a big coffee drinker, so I was like, you know what? If it tastes like coffee, I can't be too far away from like it. But no, it's really nice. The chewy balls at the bottom, I don't know what they're called.
Tapioca,
they're also nice.
Are they nice?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Probably not selling the brand that way.
Yeah, it's different.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you like them.
Yeah.
Cool.
You meant to eat them?
Yeah, you meant to drink and eat. Never have I ever bombed an investor pitch.
So I need to drink?
If you have done it, yes.
Yeah.
And then you can share what made you bomb it.
When you're actively investing, you are back-to-back, 8 to 8. So sometimes you are going through the spiel, the pitch, and then you're going, sorry, got to jump off, and you go straight into the next one. And sometimes you get that mental fatigue where you can't even string sentences together. And so you're meant to be a founder of the business, and you are just there going, I can't even give you the one sentence on what the business does here. I definitely could have executed pitches better, and it was mainly because I probably scheduled too many meetings back to back, and would go, has is, and then just butcher kind of the elevator pitch, the first sentence.
Were people like, after they saw you butcher, this is not the guy?
You can very quickly see how engaged an investor is. And sometimes it's a case of actually being competent enough to cut meetings short when you yourself get the feeling. Because investors are humans, I think sometimes they like to be polite, but you just get a sense, whereas you don't understand it. I've just bombed this pitch. I don't have any questions for you. You don't have, I'd like the 10 minutes back.
It's funny, I went to an interview, in the first couple of sentences, he was like, I just don't think you really like this. Do you want to go? And I was like, oh my gosh. But is there any ways to bring stuff back? Do you believe in that?
It's not as dramatic as this is the last time I'm ever going to speak to you. It's just, you get that feeling of there's just a disconnect here. And
you can just feel it,
there was actually quite an interesting story where we reached out to a VC with completely cold, and we gave the kind of elevator pitch with the pitch deck. And they replied saying, we don't even want to entertain this discussion. We don't believe in this, blah, 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 blah. 2 weeks into the 2 weeks into the fundraising process, I get an email from her going, I've just spoken to another investor, and I've heard that you guys are super strong founders. I feel like there's egg on my face. I misunderstood the concept.
Fair enough.
Any chance that we can have that conversation? And I thought, absolutely fair enough. I wanted to reply a snarky email.
Being like, no, you had your chance.
I respected the kind of the honesty of the humbleness of it, and so we jumped on a call, and it wasn't a good fit. So, but
what you're trying to say is that there's no point in second chances.
Maybe.
And the next never have I ever is, never have I ever felt imposter syndrome as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think anyone that doesn't drink for this, that's an entrepreneur or founder is lying. It's just this imposter syndrome of thinking that I can create engaging content and that I actually do it for a living. A lot of my job now, until we hire a team, is trying to be an in-house content creator, which is just, I never thought, to be honest with you, it's not where my strengths lie. It's not what I thought I'd ever be doing. but I get huge imposter syndrome over like the content side.
Do you feel like you're not the guy to be that guy?
I know I'm not the guy to be that guy. I know that eventually we'll hire someone amazing. I still cringe myself out. I'm still working on it.
It feels super cringe to put a camera in your face, and you were essentially just talking to yourself, isn't it?
I really struggle with it. Like I think you look at all these like super polished, slick creators and you think their voices don't sound annoying. When I listen back to my voice, it sounds so annoying.
Not yours.
I think everyone just hears their voice and they go, it's so annoying, and my voice isn't for socials or TikTok. And it's all these thoughts, and I still get them. I'm pretty rubbish at it, but I think eventually it's just you do it, you get out your comfort zone. I'm still not there, but I think that's my thought process behind it.
I totally agree. Like, I can't even listen back to podcast episodes. Like, I've got to struggle to listen back to, even though it shouldn't feel that way, but it just, there's something about your voice. It's really tough. How do you see yourself bringing millions onto this app? Because I guess you would one day be the face. I don't think you can ever hire someone to be the face of it ever, right? Actually, I mean, there's certain things, but
it's an interesting one. I'm unsure on the answer whether I'll be the face or someone else. I would have said you're right, it's unlikely it'll be someone else, but ultimately Be Real just got acquired for 500 million
by another guy, the guy who was promoting it.
Yep.
I thought he was the founder.
Yep. And I think everyone, and that's the beauty of their marketing strategy, everyone thought this TikToker was building Be Real.
I couldn't believe that when he was.
And the beautiful thing about it is one of the co-founders has one picture on the internet, and it's him on a motorbike. So he's got a helmet on. It's his Twitter profile, and he can't be found anywhere else. And there's something beautiful about just being in the shadows. We might explore that channel, in all honesty. Like, I think some founders are after limelight and want to build a big following. For us, we want the easy life. We want to focus on building the product and making millions of people enjoy something. We don't care if it's me in front of a camera or it's someone else pretending to be the founder. So we'll be exploring that.
So would you prefer a quieter life, but you do this because you have to? Like, you came on this podcast like, I've got to do this, not because you really want to be like, hey guys, you know.
So I actively try and minimise these types of interactions, which is obviously a compliment to what you're doing. And I thought,
thank you.
I looked through some of your previous guests and hosts. I was like, it seems fun. I like this, for example, the Never Have Ever. But we are constantly getting asked to network, podcast, and ultimately there's two things that matter. It is product distribution, and if, for example, we were building a B2B product and we got asked to be on a podcast that was listened to by major businesses that buy software, I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. But for us, we're a consumer app. We're TikTok Reels, and so that's where kind of our focus needs to be.
I'm really honoured you'd come on this podcast, so we'll make a lot of TikToks for you out of this in return. So the next question is, never have I ever been featured in the media for my business. I saw you on TikTok, then I saw the article. I was like, is that the same guy?
Yeah.
So then I went back to TikTok and realised it was you.
Yeah. I think, first of all, most media is like strategized. It's very rare that someone gets put in Business Insider. And so don't look at a lot of these entrepreneurs and publications, media outlets, newspapers, and think, they've just been covered without them knowing about it. Forbes 30 under 30 or whatever it is. You apply, right? And I think a lot of people get overwhelmed by like, look, all these amazing people that get covered and stuff like that, and everyone is like actually behind the scenes going like, how can we get into this outlet? And so it's part of the game. In all honesty, our investors, they have an in-house PR agency. We worked with a PR agency, and so it was a strategy.
Thank you for admitting that.
And so yes, we got featured in Business Insider. We told our story, but ultimately we had a PR team behind us. And so yes, people get picked up organically, but a lot of the time it is thought through, and there's always a reason why someone wants to be in that media outlet or publication.
Because I didn't know people were basically doing this, having PR agencies. And I remember one of the guests on the podcast was like, I used to write the articles for them and say, this is a good article, put it in, and he'd pitch them constantly, and then they put them in. But it wasn't never someone just came to you and decided to write something about you. Like,
it very rarely happens. We have had it, but ultimately that's why PR agency exists. They think about the best angles in the story that are newsworthy, they
Yeah.
then write it, and then they pitch it out to journalists.
Yeah.
And that's how it tends to work 99% of the time. And so we did that. We raised a funding round. The PR agency built the story off the funding round, wrote it for us, and then on our behalf pitched it out to journalists. And then it's up to journalists to pick up the story.
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have a bad story, it's not going to get picked up. So there needs to be something interesting. But luckily, yeah, we got picked up by a few journalists. Yeah.
Brilliant. And actually, I wanted to know, how did you know this was a thing?
I had a little bit of insight from my time at Lottie. So one of the co-founders at Lottie, he built and exited a marketing agency. And so he was very clued up in the marketing world. They were pretty good at it. And so I was aware of it. And then what a lot of people don't realise is when you get VC investment, their jobs are obviously to provide capital, but they're also to help you market your business, hire your business. So a lot of them have in-house recruitment companies and PR agencies. And so one of the reasons why we have multiple term sheets, one of the reasons why a term sheet is basically a piece of paper where an investor says, we want to invest in you. We had multiple of those, and we chose this VC because we saw that they had, a PR agency, and so we accessed that completely free. And I don't want to be focusing on writing up a story, pitching to journalists, and so being able to get someone to do that for us for free is a real benefit.
It seems that you got a lot of insight from working at Lottie. It seems, yeah.
I actually really liked the idea of Lottie. I believed in it, and that helped me because I was fully engaged, was willing to spend a lot of time involved in the business, and that gave me exposure to more and more things over the 2.5 years. The best roles that I'm seeing at the minute is a founder's associate, and basically what this is, the right-hand man or woman for a VC-backed or non-VC-backed startup, and you just get insight and exposure to everything. Obviously, you don't have the responsibility of being a founder, but you how they're raising money, how they're doing this, how they're doing that, and ultimately you're incubated as this little mini founder. And then, if you want to go and build a business, you just have that platform and foundation to work from. So that's what I did, and I think it was a good move. Yeah,
I think some people are put off by the salaries of like founder associate roles, but the insight you would learn is just invaluable. I want to be a founder associate.
Salary, you've got to be able to afford to live, right? And so salaries are important to an extent, but especially between the ages of 20 to 26, 27, I just think exposure and development should be the key.
The final never have I ever is, never have I ever stayed up all night to meet a crucial business deadline.
All night? You know what, I haven't. I've never gone zero sleep.
You've never done zero sleep?
I've never done zero sleep. I've done zero sleep when I was revising for A-levels, which is probably why the system is so silly. I felt the stress to revise for a history exam so much that I didn't sleep before it, and I now am building a business, and I will always find time to prioritise some sort of sleep.
Would you?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. In all honesty, I think people love being perceived as grinding and didn't sleep, that makes me a great founder, a great entrepreneur. The way Glenn and I work is if it's 9 p.m. on a Friday, the best thing we can do right now is step away from it, get a good night's rest. We were in the very early days of building the Has product. It was Friday, 9 p.m. We'd been working 9 till 9, so we were on a 12-hour day, whatever.
You work 12-hour days?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, again, it's so easy to make that your personality as a founder.
Yeah.
Sometimes you work 12 hours, sometimes you work 8 hours, sometimes you work 14 hours. It's whatever we feel like doing and we feel like it's appropriate for the business. But we were working 9 p.m. on Friday, and we were trying to solve a really fundamental part of our technology, our product, and we freaked out because we hit a stumbling block. And we were like, oh no, the business isn't viable because we can't do this, and we thought we could. Glenn started phoning experts and specialists in this specific AI niche. And then we were like, we're really worried, but let's just step away. Instead of working throughout the night, let's step away, have a sleep and wake up in the morning. We did that. I woke up in the morning from a text from Glenn, and he was like, oh, we were reading the wrong documents. We basically were just looking at completely the wrong documents, and the issue that we thought was a thing wasn't the case at all. So that's always why we remind ourselves, try and find as much balance as you can as a tech founder.
Brilliant. I love that real insight. You don't make it your personality. Seem pretty chill.
Yeah.
This section of the podcast is called 0 to 6 months. So it's going to be everything you did in the first half a year to get your app off the ground, because we want to give people really actionable insights that if they haven't started a business yet, they could do this in the next sort of months to get it off the ground. Yeah. How did you find your co-founder?
My co-founder Glenn, he built a dating app called Blindly, which got a lot of traction during COVID, and so I actually discovered him through a TechCrunch article.
Nice.
And so I was like, okay, cool, like this guy's doing interesting things, he's building apps. And then there was another announcement that he built an app called NextKey, which is basically top but finding houses and flats. So you would scroll through videos instead of images. And again, I was like, who's this mysterious guy kind of building these super slick consumer apps? And so I reached out to him on LinkedIn and I said, let's grab a beer. It's actually in Shoreditch, which is not too far away from where we're filming this. And so we just started as friends. He was working as a freelancer for a variety of different AI startups. I was working obviously at Lottie. Across the next 6 months, we just started to realise, okay, we work well together. So when the idea of Has came about, that we decided to leave the jobs that we were doing and go into business together.
So what sort of like mini projects were you working together on to test that relationship?
We built 3 smaller projects on the side of our full-time jobs, just mainly for fun. We'd have ideas and we'd go like, let's try this out. And so an example was an app called Bench. It was basically similar to Be Real, but for dating. So we think one of the biggest issues with dating is, and social media in general, is it's too easy to fake and to show the best aspects of your life. And so we wanted to build a dating app where you were pinged a notification and you literally had to take a selfie. And so you could see what potential dates were up to at that given time. Obviously a less glamorous selfie, and it picked up a little bit of traction. We actually, Be Real contacted us, or their lawyers contacted us. Saying this is a bit too similar to what we're doing. So we didn't want to challenge it or whatever. So we're like, fair enough. Because we had Be Real in our app store name. We called it Bench, Be Real for dating. That was the main issue. Absolutely fair enough. I still think it's a good idea. It's still live. But that was a mini project. We had fun building that. And then we built another project called Roomler. For those of you that know what it's like to find and fill spare rooms across London, we tried building an app that made that easier. And so again, that's still live.
Brilliant. So then how did Has come about? You had all your apps then. What made Has stick?
Yeah, I think the apps that we were building, they were cool concepts, but they weren't defensible from a VC kind of scale or standpoint. We knew that we wanted to try and build a big business, and by big business, get external funding and try and scale something to millions of people. We also had our ear to the ground in terms of what was going on in the AI world. There's a lot of obviously projects being built, and a lot can make a lot of money in a short period of time, but ultimately they're just wrappers around your major kind of models. We saw a use case for AI that we felt was quite unique, novel, and defensive. We also saw that a founder over in the US, he actually founded Postmates, which was actually acquired by Uber, so huge business. He sold his business and then he started something called TipTop. And TipTop was a similar concept. They've now pivoted, and they raised 23 million in funding. And so we had the idea, we saw it was getting some traction in the US, and we looked into it and we thought, you know what, we're well positioned to build this.
I would love to go into fundraising because you built the app.
Yep.
You built a version of the app and then you got 1.4 million in funding, which is huge. And how long did you do it?
We raised for 3 weeks, which is unusual, and I'll break that down. Because
I don't know how you convince someone to give you 1.4 million in 3 weeks.
We raised that amount of money in a very short period of time. I think a lot of the reason was because of the stuff that Glenn and I had done previously, and I think just Glenn and I playing around with projects, getting involved in other startups, gave us that authority and that understanding of what it takes to try and build a VC-backed startup, to convince investors at a very early stage that these guys are first-time founders, but ultimately we're willing to back them with our capital. It was the hardest 3 weeks of my life, definitely from a professional sense.
Fairs. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, but when you say 3 weeks, it just sounds like funny because it doesn't seem so long.
When we talk about 3 weeks, I think we started pretty much on 1st of December and we closed the round just before Christmas. Now, just before Christmas. So the legal process then spills over, and so we actually received the money in the bank in February. So it's a 3-month process from end to end, but in terms of closing and getting commitments of the cash, it was 3 weeks. 3 weeks doesn't seem like a long time, but when it's something that you wake up and all you're doing is speaking from 8 until 8 because you have US investors, European investors, and you're just getting no. it is incredibly hard. Mentally, it's all consuming, but all it takes is that first yes, and then the investment world is very FOMO driven, very snowball driven, which is, oh, this person's backed us, oh, we know him or her, will basically go off their expertise and back you also. So it shouldn't be like that, but the first yes is so important. But ultimately, I think it's what Glenn and I brought to the table from previous experience that enabled us to raise that amount of money.
So how did you have that resilience? Because hearing no's can be hard on your self-confidence. It can make you lose faith in the idea. How did you keep going?
Super tough. You're getting rejected. You don't know how it's going to end in that moment. You don't know that yes is around the corner. Usually I would be occupied during the day because I was raising, and then it was really in the evenings where I was exhausted, just thinking, and you're listening to some of the questions that investors ask, and you're rewinding the back of your head and kind of the reasons why they're deciding not to invest, and you let that seep in and you start believing it yourself. And so I think having a co-founder is definitely good. For context, I raised the money on my own, so I was on the calls on my own.
And
Glenn was building the product, but what that gave us was an outside perspective. So when I was in the trenches trying to raise, Glenn was able to add a fresh view on things that wasn't tarnished by today's conversations. Obviously, when you get into investment committee, which is when a venture capital firm wants to invest in you, you have to present the idea to a group of, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. That's when obviously Glenn was involved. But at the initial conversations, we kept to just myself.
I think it's really good that someone's not there getting influenced by what people are saying.
Yeah, I think not listening to kind of investors, he could just have a fresh perspective and go, okay, that's quite clearly rubbish, ignore, on to the next one. And I think that was really valuable for us.
Was there a no that really hurt? When someone said no and you're like, oh, damn it, that hurt, that one.
There was a VC firm, early stage. The reason why it hurt so much is because they didn't understand the concept. And so to make a big decision like that based on not understanding a concept did hurt, because it felt like it was something right up their alley. But it just was a miscommunication, which was probably a fault of mine and also a fault of theirs, not asking the right questions, not wanting to dig deeper to understand it, and ultimately just, I think, spending too much time on a couple of issues that we knew we had solutions to and we couldn't explain. It all ended well, but I remember thinking it feels like we didn't give it our best shot with that investor. So it was on me, it was my fault, but ultimately it's not a rare story. Getting 20 minutes in front of an investor, they're not really getting it, and then moving on. It happens.
And I actually wanted to dig deeper, just to go back onto the fundraising. What was in your pitch deck? Because raising in 3 weeks, you must have had this super duper pitch deck.
Yes, I think it was no more than 10 slides. Investors are so short in time, they, for a living, want to try and sift through, I don't know if I can swear, but BS. And so if you're there adding fluff, it's just not useful. And so for us, we started with the problem. Ultimately, the investor needs to see or feel the pain point. I think one of the reasons why we were able to raise well is because investors resonated with the problem of, I can't be asked to sell the things that I own. I have money sitting in my house, but it's a chore. And so a solution that would solve that resonates with me, and so I'm going to listen. It's then presenting the opportunity, how we're going to do it, and ultimately in an early stage, people think it's all on the product. So whether that's the website, the app, it's not the case. It's actually how you're going to distribute it. Distribution is arguably more important than the product in the early days. It's how you're going to design the product to enable yourself to distribute it, and I think we painted that picture quite nicely. And then why now? So just a little intro to yourself, why you're the right people to build it. We did have a quick market summary, so how big the market is. The investors didn't care about it because once you get above 10 billion in market size, they know and they can see, okay, this is a venture backable business. So simplicity is absolutely key. Don't worry about design, just bullet points, and just think, if I was really short on time and I wanted to understand something as quickly as possible, what would I want to see?
Yeah. Interesting. And is there any secrets you could give aspiring entrepreneurs that would help them raise funding?
So I think there's a lot of outside, or when we were fundraising, and probably still to this day, about it's not a good fundraising environment. I think you need to block that out and not listen to the external noise and be almost blissfully unaware and naive and go after every single investor, angel that you can find. We completely left our egos at the door.
Yeah.
If someone had money and we thought would be a good fit, we were reaching out to them. Anyone,
like,
whether that was
didn't care.
Twitter, LinkedIn, email, we weren't too proud to do anything. And I think that's the first step. I think also realising that fundraising is a little bit of a game.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, investors don't like being the first to put money in and feel like they're the only people that believe in something. And it's almost like building a story or a race where you want to put out a few messages, seed that you're going to raise, make a little bit of noise, and then by the end of it, you want to be playing pretty aggressively and be saying, look, we've got this term sheet, they valued the business at this amount, we valued it at this amount, and not being afraid to do that.
It's like you're in or you're out.
Yeah, and I think as a founder, you're like, oh wow, I've got massive imposter syndrome here. These are investors, they have billions under their management, they know better and they don't know better. And play those games, a lot of it is psychological in terms of this is one of the hottest deals. If you're sitting on the fence, we don't want to speak to you because ultimately...
you would tell people, you would be like, this is it, this is the next big thing.
Yeah, you have to have that confidence. Not from the beginning. You need, like I say, you need to build it up. You need to warm it up. You will get loads of no's.
Yeah.
But there's still value to be derived from the no's.
Rounding off, what are the future goals for Has in the years to come?
We want to have a bootstrapped mindset. It is just me and my co-founder at the minute. We have, without being crude, we have over £1 million in a bank account.
What are you doing with that money?
You sound like one of our investors.
Yeah.
We value... We're not losing sight.
You just like to look at it.
We like to look at it, but no, we think we can get a long way with just myself and Glenn. We've actually hired a third employee, an AI engineer. We'll probably hire one more person in the pre-seed, so it'd be a team of 4. So
you use the £1 million to pay yourselves for now?
We pay ourselves a little bit. In the new AI world, processing costs, it's not free to deploy AI technology and onboard a user. It's just constant costs of extracting data, classifying data, using models to extract and create outputs. And so if, for example, tomorrow we got 1 million users, we would run out of cash from a processing standpoint. Okay, and so that's when you start to understand, okay, that's why they're staying so lean, because ultimately we want to leave enough cash if we get 100,000 users over the next month, which can happen on the social consumer side. Obviously, it's unlikely. We need to know that we have runway to then at least give ourselves another month to raise the next round, etc. We want to try and scale Has to 100,000 users with 0 ad spend. Difficult. We don't think it's going to happen in 2 months. It might well be in 2 years' time. I come back on this podcast and I go, right, what's the update? And I go, we still lived off this pre-seed money, but we're now at 100,000 users. We're now going to look at raising the next round. So, it's a milestone of 100,000 users as quickly as possible, but most importantly, it's how we do that. It is, can we do that without paid ad spend? Because then we think we have a viable concept there.
And what's your top mantra for entrepreneurship now, having done it for some months now?
Just get started. There are communities out there willing to help for free. We've actually, I know it sounds stupid, but X or Twitter is actually a really good platform now for consumer founders. A lot of people are building in public, and I find that when things get overwhelming and stressful, my algorithm feed is now just social consumer founders. Going and seeing what they're doing, sharing kind of failures, successes, actually really settles me and refocuses me. And so go and seek external help and support from others going through the same situation.
Brilliant. And the final question is, what is the best aspect of being an entrepreneur?
I think it is freedom. I think it's not freedom in terms of I'm not sitting on a beach in Bali. It's freedom in terms of I have freedom and control of what I want Has to look like from a culture standpoint, from a product standpoint, from a monetization standpoint. And so it's being able to control and have control of your own future within certain aspects of your life.
I love that. What an amazing point to end on.